maybe like 2 or 3 people.
Nice and warm.
But maybe more than one person would get it, so we know, like, because it could be helpful.
All right. We need some folks to shift over some more.
Oh, they just told us to go this way.
Oh, you all want them to go this way?
We should be good. We should be good with
Okay.
this. As long as we're nice and tight.
Okay.
Awesome. And we are live, so we're good.
And you all can come up some more. Come up towards me. Come up.
Mama.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I can take those from your phone.
Okay. All right. Okay. Marina. Does everybody know the order? Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Dr. Karama.
Karama.
Okay.
Karama
Kumerli. Okay.
Karama Huwash.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start, first of all, my name is Congresswoman Cori Bush. I represent St. Louis, Missouri, Missouri's 1st District in Congress.
St. Louis.
And I want to start by thanking, first of all, my colleagues, some are who are on the way, but Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib for all of her hard work and her commitment and dedication and her heart and everything that she has given and sacrificed to save lives of, and most of whom people she does not know. And then for all of the doctors and healthcare workers standing here with us today. These doctors are part of a growing group of over 2,000 medical professionals who support peace, and who are calling for an immediate and a lasting ceasefire. They have come from all across the country to Washington, D.C. to share their stories and their experiences as doctors in order to help persuade lawmakers to collectively act to stop the killing, stop the starvation and displacement of Palestinian men, women, and children. To mourn the loss of the many doctors and healthcare workers, healthcare professionals whose lives have been lost in Gaza. As a nurse, when you make the decision to go into healthcare, into the healthcare field, you do so because you have a desire to help people, even in their most difficult moments. In fact, when you become a doctor, I believe, you take an oath to first do no harm. It is an oath that every doctor standing up here took. It is a pledge that I formally took as a nurse in my heart. It is a promise to care for all people without limitations, without boundaries, and without any borders. The doctors here today and the thousands around the globe know that their promise to save lives is not confined within the walls of the hospitals or the clinics that they work at. It applies to everyone, no matter their race, their religion, their nationality, and it is without conditions. So when we continue to see the atrocities coming out of Gaza, tens of thousands being killed and tens of thousands more are injured, dozens of medical facilities attacked, as medical professionals, when we see children, mothers, fathers, and grandparents killed or left to nothing but horror, we have to act. We cannot be silent. And for the doctors who are in Gaza operating and treating patients as hospitals are being targeted and bombed, as infections and diseases spread, as starvation grows, and even the most standard equipment and medicines are scarce. Even amid all this, they stay true to their commitment to serve and to care. Even as they face threats to their own lives, they stay to help the thousands upon thousands who are injured. We acknowledge the doctors and their sacrifice, including those doctors without borders who shared a powerful message on a whiteboard in Al-Ada Hospital, one of the last remaining functional hospitals in northern Gaza. A whiteboard that said, Whoever stays until the end will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us. This is why we are here today. The best way to honor the sacrifice of these doctors and medical workers and staff working in horrific conditions is to put an end to the violence so that we can save lives, all the lives. Congress has a moral and an ethical responsibility to act because as members of Congress, we took an oath. We took an oath of service. We took an oath for all of the people. So when we hear genocidal rhetoric, when we witness devastation and mass murder, when we finance the bombs being dropped, when we intentionally disregard the suffering, we allow the people we represent to be complicit in mass atrocities. And let me be clear about what's happening. These are war crimes. The targeting of civilians is a war crime. The targeting of medical facilities is a war crime. The starvation and the withholding of water and electricity is a war crime. The collective punishment of 2.3 million people is a war crime. And we refuse to be silent. Humanity has already lost so much. We cannot afford to lose any more. We must choose peace. We choose love. We choose to demand a ceasefire now. Thank you.
Amen, sister. Amen.
And now we call up next Dr. Kume, who is a pediatric neurologist at Boston Children's Medical Hospital.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm a neurologist for children, and I want to tell you about my career over the last 4 years. I started with providing telemedicine to my patients with concussion before the pandemic hit. It was cheap, it was effective, and it seemed to make sense medically. I then went on to the COVID era, and during COVID, we doctors, all of us, started doing telemedicine almost exclusively because we wanted to save our patients from COVID virus. That was a very big success. My hospital almost doubled their visits, and we provided excellent care. I'm involved in an organization called Health for Palestine. And because I live in Boston and my colleagues live in the refugee camps in Palestine, I use telemedicine. And I use telemedicine to give them advice, to talk about cases together. I signed up for Gaza telemedicine when the attacks on Gaza started and when we started losing so many of the health workers in Gaza. We lost over 250 people, which is a remarkable loss for a place of the size of Gaza. So 2 weeks ago, I had my first telemedicine consult from Gaza. And I'm going to pull my phone and look at it because I do not want to miss any of these details. So this was a woman who's a journalist who called me. She said that my daughters need help. I got a WhatsApp note on my phone. Sarah is 3. She had a traumatic brain injury with skull fracture and bleed. She had a brain bleed. She was in the hospital when the hospital was working for 9 days, and then she needed to evacuate with her mother. And her sister, who was also bombed at the same time, was so severely injured that she was sent to Egypt to get medical care there with the father. The other girl is still in coma. Sarah is with her mother, still recovering from severe skull fracture and severe parenchymal injury, which is a very severe traumatic brain injury. Sarah cannot eat. She can say words, and she's asking for her toys, and she's asking for candy. Her mother is witnessing her, not the same person. She's very aggressive. She cries all the time. She does not sleep. She's very irritable. She sent me all these details on WhatsApp. My heart sank because everything that I want to recommend for this girl is not available. I wanted to say, make sure she's well hydrated. There is no water. I wanted to say, make sure that she sleeps well. They can't because they are in a school with 10,000 people and the bombs are hitting everywhere around them. I wanted to say to her, keep her safe, and she couldn't. I felt very embarrassed. This was the worst day of my life as a medical doctor. I thought telemedicine was effective, cheap, and works. I discovered not in Gaza. In Gaza, nothing works because our medical colleagues have nothing. They are being killed. I want also to tell you that I, with the other doctors here, are part of an organization called Doctors Against Genocide. We are a global group of medical professionals. We have nurses, we have therapists, we have phlebotomists. Anybody who cares about medicine and health is invited to join us. Our mission is to stand against war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. We want to prevent these crimes from affecting the health of our patients anywhere in the world. We swore an oath to do no harm, every one of us. The politicians have failed us. We are not able to save the lives of the people that we are entrusted with. We are asking every politician in this city, in this town, to ask for a ceasefire so that children in Gaza and anywhere in the world are not killed by our bombs that we pay for. We swore an oath to do no harm. Please help us. Thank you so much.
And next we'll call up Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota's 5th District.
Thank you, Cori, and thank you all for having me. It is an honor to join all of you. I know doctors and healthcare workers know on a direct level what pain and physical harm and death look like. You spend your life treating people and saving lives. Your voices are especially needed right now as so many lives are being taken. Like many of you, I am outraged. I am outraged that the violence continues even after freeing hostages and a temporary pause in Israel's siege on Gaza. We are now seeing in ways we could not fully appreciate the scale of the devastation. Northern Gaza is nearly flattened, with entire blocks of residential buildings reduced to rubble. Decaying bodies of women and children are strewed across major roads. Alarming footage reportedly shows premature babies who were left to die by the Israeli military inside a hospital. We learned in a shocking, disturbing report confirming what many of us feared about the targeting of civilians in Gaza, that it is intentional and being assisted by artificial intelligence. Given everything we know, how can the United States continue to hand the IDF a blank check without any conditions? How can our government say we are concerned but do nothing to stop this war? How can we say you need to bomb fewer civilians and then sell them the literal bombs that are being used to bomb civilians? The trauma of the past few months will live in the hearts and minds of Palestinians and Israeli populace for decades to come. But one thing is clear now. We cannot continue the horrifying violence that wanton killings of civilians and kids that marked the past months. How many times do we have to learn the same lesson over and over again? That peace and security will never be solved with mass killings and violence. That violence only begets more violence. The United States must make it clear, as the country that funds Israel to the tune of billions of dollars every year, no more war, no more bombings. We must at long last have a permanent ceasefire that guarantees the security, peace, and justice for Palestinians and Israelis alike. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Lyon, an internist and a human rights professor at the University of Chicago.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Evan Lyon. I'm here as a person. I'm here as a son. I'm here as a partner. I am here as a father. And I'm here as a doctor. And I'm here to call with my colleagues for an immediate ceasefire and to an end of this ongoing and violent genocide against Palestinians. We are witnessing the single most dangerous humanitarian crisis in half a century. We recognize this, the world has recognized this, the UN has recognized this, the invoking of Article 99 yesterday recognizes this is a crisis of the most important urgency, and we have to keep our eyes open. I've worked in a destroyed hospital following the earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti in January of 2010. I worked at a place that was a hospital, it was destroyed. A damaged hospital is not a hospital. I think we are losing our way with the brave details that are coming to say, well, there are 3 partially functioning hospitals in northern Gaza. A partially functioning hospital is not a hospital. It is a place to gather the dead, to witness unnecessary death and suffering. And same as following a natural disaster, it is a place to collect bodies for mass burial. This is preventable. After the earthquake in Haiti, we saw thousands of people came to us each day asking for help. We could not help them. We watched them die. We're watching that today and yesterday in Gaza. The last thing I want to say is that if conditions do not change immediately, we will see twice as many, 3 times as many, more people die of preventable illness, of treatable conditions, and especially of contagious disease. Waterborne illness is 100% preventable, 100% treatable, and it's happening now, and it will continue to happen without water, sanitation, and medications. This is 100% predictable. It's something we know is coming, and we need to speak up and we need to stop the violence. We are witnessing a genocide against the Palestinian people. There's no distinction in international law, including the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, between perpetrating genocide and complicity in genocide. My understanding of my oath as a doctor, my understanding of human rights and international law, my government is complicit in genocide against the Palestinian people. Today, my government is complicit and in this crime and murder. Whether this murder is caused by a bomb or a bullet, and whether murder is caused by lack of water, lack of food, lack of shelter, and lack of basic medical care, it is the same. We need to make it plain. We need to speak up. We need to not look away. Ceasefire now. End the genocide in Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, ceasefire now.
Next, we will call up Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Cori and Ilhan and all the incredible doctors that spoke. The answer is not war crimes. It can never be war crimes. So I want to thank you so much for your incredible courage. I know for a fact, many of my friends who work in the medical field, it has been hard to just even merely exist, to merely be in spaces with those that don't want you to speak up against the injustices that you see over and over again when you just turn your phone on and just look. So thank you so much for your courage in this moment to stand on the right side of history. We know that there is a concerted effort to silence those speaking up for peaceful coexistence and the human rights of all people. We will not be silent. Fighting to save lives, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial, especially when the majority of Americans outside of this institution supports a ceasefire. The images coming out of Gaza are horrific. Netanyahu has resumed his genocidal bombing campaign with President Biden's support. We need a permanent ceasefire now. We cannot look away. According to recent data of polling that came out, and this is important because, you know, they listen to polling sometimes when it doesn't even matter. But 76% of Democrats support conditioning funding to Israel and upholding human rights. We must ensure that everyone sees exactly what the extremist Netanyahu is doing to thousands of innocent Palestinian civilians, especially our children who are being starved in Gaza and pulled out of the rubble, many in their pajamas. These are brutal reality of occupation and apartheid. Doctors, nurses, ambulance workers targeted and killed while trying to save lives. Patients are terrified, dodging Israeli fire in the hospital compounds, literally in the entryway of the emergency entry. Can you imagine? Operating rooms overflowing with dead and dying men, women and children, medical staff desperately trying to save who they can without even the most basic supplies, food or clean water or medicine, surgeries, amputations, literally cutting children's legs off with no anesthesia. On the floor. This one's hard for me. The decomposing bodies of premature babies exposed for the world to see at Al-Nasser Children's Hospital after Israeli forces bombed it and forced the medical staff to evacuate. Hearing that doctor that was forced out, leaving her babies. It was her babies too. Jesus. And for them to come back, for her to come back and see decomposing bodies of these 4 premature babies on oxygen were found eaten by worms, blackened by mold, and mauled by stray dogs. Why? Because they're Palestinian babies, you want to look away? They're babies. The dehumanization and violence is horrific. I hate giving them my tears, but I'm not crying because of them. I'm crying because our shared humanity is getting lost every single day. We do not call for a ceasefire. Why? Why do my colleagues continue to ignore the voices of their constituents? They send me pictures of people protesting in front of their offices, and I say, why? You think I'm not in charge? Those are your residents.
Yes.
Go out there and talk to them.
Amen. Yes. Talk to them.
Meet with them. Sit down with them. They're your constituents. Y'all, the United Nations General Assembly supports a ceasefire. All the major human rights organizations support a ceasefire. These doctors support a ceasefire. Presidents and world leaders around the globe support a ceasefire. The Pope supports a ceasefire. This isn't controversial. It's long past time for my colleagues to recognize our shared humanity and value all human life. Congresswoman Cori Bush and I should not have to sit on the steps with no authorization to say we're going to mourn all lives. Both Israelis and Palestinians, no matter their faith. Our movement for ceasefire is only growing stronger, and I'm grateful for each and every single of voices here today, especially my doctors in the Michigan 12th Congressional District. I will continue to demand a ceasefire, the immediate delivery of enough humanitarian aid in Gaza. And I say this, enough. The release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained by Israel. Every American to come home and demand that the Palestinian people live free from occupation. The path to peace must include addressing the root causes, y'all, of this conflict, of ending the blockade, the occupation, the apartheid. Can't ignore it anymore. The Palestinian people deserve to live with equal rights, freedom, and human dignity. The Israeli government has killed over 16,000 Palestinians in Gaza, including over 6,000 children. Over 1.7 million Palestinians have been displaced from their homes. Many of their children are asking, when are we going home? There is no home to go back to. And thousands are missing under the rubble. So I once again stand here to ask my colleagues, how many more lives will be enough for you all? How many more innocent civilians and children have to be killed? How many more lives will you accept as collateral damage? There is nothing humanitarian about giving Palestinians a few days of rest before they are bombed again. We are calling for an end of this violence, not a break in the violence. The temporary pauses are not enough. We need a permanent ceasefire now. We need an end to the genocide. President Biden, I say this over and over again because I hope you hear me. You must listen to the voices of the majority of Americans and the majority of Democrats who worked their butt off to get you elected. You have to represent all of us, Mr. President, not just some. Call for a ceasefire now.
Amen. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Next, I'm going to introduce Dr. Nadel Jabur. He's an internist genericus. I can't say these words, that's why I'm not medical. Thank you, nurse. And I know, and president of the Advanced Care Center.
Thank you.
That's
fine. Thank you. Good morning, all. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Thank you, Representative Bosch, for giving me the opportunity to speak up my pain and anguish. Thank you, Representative Rashida, for your support and for your voice. I stand before you as a representative of the medical community, as a voice for humanity, and specifically on behalf of my patients in Michigan who are profoundly disturbed by the devastating loss of human life they are witnessing in Gaza and the West Bank. The scene of murdered children, women, and innocent civilians have left my patients in Michigan in a state of extreme distress. They are all expressing stress, depression, anxiety, symptoms of PTSD. They are all losing their faith in humanity. They are all losing their faith in what is called rules-based world order. These are real people, real lives. They cannot function anymore. They cannot sleep. I cannot sleep. I stopped treating my patients for diabetes and heart disease and stomach problems. They stopped worrying about those. They are all coming because they are stressed out. They cannot sleep. Their lives have been shattered by the unimaginable horrors of this unfolding genocide they are witnessing in Gaza and the West Bank. My patients who have entrusted me to be their voice are pleading for an immediate ceasefire that must not only be immediate but also permanent and unconditional. My patients are also pleading to you to allow for an immediate and unlimited aid to Gaza. They are imploring our government to immediately deploy multiple large field hospitals, American field hospitals that are already there on the American warships that are roaming the shores of Gaza. America, use these warships to send these field hospitals to treat the thousands and thousands of injured children, and stop using them to send more bombs to kill babies America, you can always do the right thing. The field hospitals are there. Please deploy them immediately to save humanity and human life. I implore the administration and all politicians to take swift action to stop the ongoing mass murder and genocide of the whole people of Palestine. Never again should be never again for all, not just for some. Every passing hour without ceasefire means more lives and more children are killed. Ceasefire is not just a political arrangement. It's not a power play between different factions here or there in the Congress or in the Senate. Ceasefire is a matter of life and death for millions who are entrapped in Gaza. Ceasefire means thousands of lives are hanging in the balance. As medical professionals, we took an oath to do no harm and to protect the sanctity of human life, all human life. We're against the loss of any human life, whether that life is an American or of a Palestinian or an Israeli or a Chinese or a Mexican or a black or a brown or white. All human life is sacred. All human life is equal. We are here to protect human life. This is the commitment. This commitment is the essence of our medical mission. The toll is immense and it's getting much and much worse every day. I want to share a quick story of a colleague of mine who shared with me yesterday. He's a cardiologist and he works in one of the local DC hospitals here. He said last week one of his patients had a heart attack and he had to do an emergency cardiac angioplasty to save his life. He was very happy at the end of the procedure. Took about 40 minutes that he was able to save the life of this gentleman. Only to learn a few minutes later that 120 members of his family were murdered. He went to school for 30 years to save one life, only to learn that 120 members of his family were murdered while he was doing the procedure. They were murdered by a bunker buster bomb, an American bomb. It's a 2,000-pound bomb that's given for free by America to Israel to murder babies, to crush their skulls. And this cardiologist paid for this bomb by his tax money. He paid for the bomb to murder his own family. This madness cannot go on, regardless of your political views, regardless of assigning the blame here or there, regardless of the intricacies of this conflict. The unequivocal truth is that no more loss of human life is justified. We stand here united in our call for peace, humanity, and for the urgent provision of aid for the besieged and butchered people of Gaza, and for immediate ceasefire. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now, not tomorrow, not after 1 hour. Ceasefire after 1 hour means 10 more babies are going to be killed. Ceasefire tomorrow means few hundred more children and civilians are going to be killed. Ceasefire next week means thousands more of civilians being killed with our own money. Ceasefire must be now. Me, my patients, and the vast majority of the beautiful and the hardworking American people are calling for immediate ceasefire. We refuse to be complicit in this murder and genocide. We refuse to have children being murdered in our name and with our tax money, hard-earned tax money. Ceasefire must be now. Please, please stop the mass murder. Never again is never again for all, not just for the few. Thank you.
Dr. Shakur, Dr. Shakur. Yeah, sorry, I got it the second time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be reiterating a lot of what you've already heard, but this is my story. I'm sorry.
Loud.
I'm going to be reiterating a lot of what you have heard, but this is my story. I am a pulmonary and critical care physician, and I'm here to talk about the escalating crisis that we are all bearing witness to in Gaza. I have tried so hard over the last several weeks to imagine what it might have been, what it is like, and what it has been like to be a physician trying to practice and take care of patients in Gaza over the last 2 months, and I fall short every time that I try to imagine what that must be like. And the best that I can come up with is that I was a COVID physician. And I was working during the pandemic in a tertiary care center with close to 1,000 beds. So I do have some very small understanding of what it feels like to try and take care of your patients when you feel completely and utterly helpless, when you feel that nothing is under your control. I have some understanding of what it's like to put yourself in the front line and put yourself in direct danger to care for your patients. Because we took an oath to care for our patients, and because it's what healthcare providers do. We stay. We stay. We don't abandon our patients. And I know what it's like to see your country's healthcare system be brought to its knees. And in our case, it was by a virus, despite resources aplenty. And none of my experiences could even begin to prepare me for watching this evolving genocide in Gaza. We are watching our colleagues in Gaza stay and stay and stay. And they are staying until the bitter end, caring for injuries in small children that would break any one of us. Working despite an appalling lack of resources. Performing surgeries without anesthesia. Things that you cannot possibly imagine. Changing bandages on babies who have third-degree burns over 90% of their body without the ability to provide any relief from that pain. Caring for wounds without water, without antibiotics. We're seeing children leaving the hospital in deplorable condition because there is no ability to care for them any further. We are witnessing the majority of our elected officials here in the United States stand still. At best, you can say stand still. And at worst, display their complicity while watching a healthcare system collapse in real time in front of our eyes. And in this instance, we can't blame a novel and an unpredictable virus because this collapse is because of us. It's because of us. Because of what we as a nation are doing and what we as a nation will not do. You take an already precarious healthcare system that has been besieged by blockade for close to 20 years, and you add unrelenting bombing, and you have a predictable disaster. You refuse to call for a permanent ceasefire, and you have a predictable disaster. This is a man-made disaster created by bombs, lack of humanitarian access to and aid, lack of water, lack of medical supplies, food, and electricity. To date, 135 healthcare facilities in Gaza have been targeted by Israel. At least 21 hospitals and 47 healthcare facilities are non-operational. The remainder are partially functional. We all know what that means. They do not work. To date, over 270 healthcare workers have been killed. I've had to update that statistics 3 times in the last 48 hours. Okay? 3 times in the last 48 hours. At least 16 of those were killed in the line of duty caring for patients. I need to add as well and say explicitly that if even one of my colleagues had been killed because of a virus, not because of a bomb, but because of a virus, we would have been devastated in terms of our ability to take care of our fellow American citizens during the COVID pandemic. What some of you don't understand is that we are 20 years in the making in terms of our careers, okay? It takes years beyond that to develop the art of caring for your patients. You can't just kill doctors and expect that you're just going to snap your fingers or that somehow it's not going to lead to utter devastation on a civilian population. To move on, 53 ambulances have been destroyed, many of them with medics within those ambulances. They have been targeted. And roads that would facilitate evacuation of patients have been bombed. They are impassable. And I cannot imagine attempting to work under these conditions. And it could stop today. It needs to stop today. It should have stopped weeks ago. So that we need it to stop so that the monumental work of caring for thousands upon thousands of sick and wounded can begin in earnest. I am asking my elected officials to do their job so that we as a global community can do ours. And I want to add something, and I'm going to try not to cry.
It's so hard, though.
My husband's family is from Gaza. And to date, 41 close and 80 of our extended family have been murdered. Our family are not just numbers. They are beloved aunts. They are cousins. They are physicians. They are pharmacists. And they are children. So many children in our family have been murdered. And it bears mentioning that the majority of our family that have been killed were in the so-called South, where we have asked all these Palestinians to evacuate to. We have family in the north that have moved 4 times trying to find safety with newborn twins born right before October 7th, and an elderly uncle of my husband's in tow. Dehydration and not able, the cousin, she is dehydrated. She cannot make breast milk. These are newborn twins. There is no water in order to mix formula. What would you have them do? We have family in the north that we have lost contact with because their homes are surrounded by Israeli tanks, and a neighbor they watched try to exit the building was sniped and killed. Those of our family that did make it to the south do not feel safe because there is nowhere safe in Gaza right now. The south continues to be bombed, and our family, our dignified, beautiful family, are living in tents. They are struggling to stay warm, they are struggling to find food, and they are struggling to find clean water. I was here on this hill 2 weeks ago, beseeching members of Congress to call for a lasting ceasefire, and in that time, more toddlers in my husband's family have been killed. I literally said that my husband's family lives are depending on all of you. And I just want to say that it is not easy to sleep at night knowing that my tax dollars are paying for the bombs that have killed my husband's family. Or to know that many more of our family will likely die, be it from bombing or injury or preventable illness. So as a doctor and a member of our civil society, I appeal to the humanity in all of you. Please call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Thank you.
Man, thank you.
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Go ahead, Dr.
Next, we will have Dr. Ala Ali. He's a family medicine physician and president of an urgent family care.
This is our last and final speaker.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. As they said, my name is Dr. Ala Ali. I'm a proud Gazan, Palestinian, American, Michigander physician. And I say proud of my people of America because our politicians have failed us big time. I'm here just to share a story, a personal story that happened with me. And I'm gonna start, I have a younger brother lives in Gaza, or lived in Gaza. He just turned 30 in the war. He's married to his wife is from the east side of Gaza. Her parents, brothers and sisters, and her family is about 17 people. After they were bombed and struck by the airplanes, they were evacuated. So they came to our house in Gaza. They lived with my brother and his wife. The bomb did not stop. They continued to bomb all over the place around our house. So her dad said, they are asking us to go to the south. Let's just go to the south. My brother said, we're not going to the south, we're just staying here. They heard so many stories about people going to the south and being killed in their way to the south. He said, I'm not gonna speak for her. She speaks for herself. Her dad went to her and asked her, do you wanna come with us? She said, no, I'm staying with my husband. She was pregnant in her 6 months. She has 3 children. Raouf, who is 5. Fatma, who is 3. And Bana, who's 1.5. Her dad started crying, saying, if I leave you, you will die. She said, Dad, I'm gonna stay with my husband. So her dad, with his 17 member of his family, left going to the south. But then he came back and he started crying, begging his daughter, please come with me. I cannot leave you. She said, no, I'm staying with my husband. My brother told him, my father-in-law is gonna be a long trip. There will be so many obstacles, so many difficulties. At that time, that regime prevented water, prevented food. They have nothing. He said, at least let me go out and try to find water to give it to you for your trip. So my brother went out, but he never came back. He was killed looking for water. At that time, her father told her, now you have no excuse. You're coming with us. She said, I'm not leaving. I'm gonna stay. Her father and his 17 members of his family went to the south. And in their way to the south, they were struck. All of the 17 were murdered. All of the 17 were killed. Now, she's a widowed, taking care of young orphans. She's an orphan herself. She doesn't know what to do. No water, no food, no electricity, no internet, no cell phones, nothing. What was her crime? God knows. My brother, I haven't seen him for 20 years. His wish was for me to see him. We were planning actually to see him that October. I was planning to go with my mom, who is 73 years old. She made him this scarf to wear. And our family tragedy continues. Yesterday when I was talking to the group, my brother called me and he said, our Mukhtar is like the biggest person in the family. He lives with his wife and children and grandchildren in a house that is formed from 4 stories. The house was targeted with a bunker bomb. 70 members died. 70 members burned. 70 members turned into pieces. They were not able to collect which arm to which body, which leg to which person. More than 10,000 children were killed, were murdered. And the bombing is continuing. While we're standing here, people are dying there. But I guess that brave child, when he was asked by an interviewer, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, we are Gazans, children, we don't grow up. I'm calling here personally and on behalf of my health organization for any human person who has conscience to participate in a permanent ceasefire. In a permanent ceasefire. In a permanent ceasefire. Thank you guys. My daughter Reem, she just wants to say one word if you don't mind.
My uncle Muhammad, he died just trying to get some water for his father-in-law. And my father-in-law and my uncle in Gaza, Muhammad, he died just trying to get some water, and I don't see how that's just an act of terrorism. So, I don't know.
Thank you,
You know, here we say, let the children speak. Let the children speak. Bring the kids up to the front. Let them speak. But there is let them live. Yeah. Let them live. We'll now open it up for a couple questions. When I call on you, please say your name and your outlet. Yes. Speak up a little bit.
We've spoken to a lot of... Sorry about that. We've spoken to a lot of Palestinian students who say that the rise in Islamophobia in this country has not been weighed the same as the rise in anti-Semitism in this country. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill just had a hearing about anti-Semitism and the rise in anti-Semitism. Do you feel as though Congressman believes that Islamophobia has been weighted the same as anti-Semitism in this country?
Hold on. Anybody here a student on campus?
Anybody here a student on campus?
Yeah. No, I just rather students speak and stuff. I mean, look, the dehumanization is happening, and I definitely... So the question is whether or not that it's weighed. I mean, look, there's no hierarchy who gets hated the most.
Right.
I'm tired of folks, trying to say, no, we're getting hurt more. Everyone gets hurt when we allow any form of hate to increase in our country. But what is really distressing is when, Congresswoman Bush and I are called repugnant, or what is the other word?
Disgraceful.
Disgraceful for calling for a ceasefire, for people to use this moment to try to, in many ways, target women of color, myself as being a Palestinian American, and others for speaking the truth about what is happening on the ground. I mean, you heard it firsthand from doctors that tell you the reality of what's happening on the ground. But it's very unfortunate. I want, all those that, from college students to those in the workplace, I'm getting the calls of people being pushed to silence, being bullied. Some people weaponizing anti-Semitism in a way to silence voices. All of that needs to stop. Americans have a right to speak up Americans have a right to the institutions they work at or the people that represent them to say, look, this is my opinion. I believe you should support X, Y, and Z. And again, we have to be able to make sure that as we look at all these forms of hate, that it is not being weaponized in a way to silence voices like myself and many of the voices that are here.
Let me get to another person.
Yes. It's been great TV. Congresswoman Bush, obviously your support for the Palestinian community is great, but you still face a lot of criticism at home for being perceived as anti-Semitic. What's your response to that criticism?
So first of all, let me just say, I have condemned anti-Semitism 800 times over and over, and not just since October the 7th. But this is the thing. As much as it is unacceptable and it is intolerable, we also can't conflate the criticism of Israel, the Israeli government, with anti-Semitism. And we also have to stop with the words. It's this word, you said that word, you said this word, it hurt me. Well, how much hurt do people feel when the bombs hit them? Like, that's what I'm worried about. Yeah. This word hurt me. You used this word. Well, a word was used, but you are safe. A word was used and you stand here in this country and you're able to walk in and out of your home. You're able to walk to the grocery store. You're able to tuck your kid in at night. You're not worried about if today is the day the bomb hits you. And so, no, I am not anti-Semitic. I have called for peace for everyone. All life is sacred, and I will not continue to allow people to try to distract by calling me or my colleagues anti-Semitic. You can take it how you want, but at the end of the day, we are the ones that continue to show up and fight for all. When we had a vigil, when Rashida Tlaib and I had a vigil along with our colleagues right there on those steps, and we said we're going to mourn and grieve the lives of all Israelis and all Palestinians killed, where were the rest of our colleagues? Where were all the people who received the information that this was going to be something that was open for them to show up to? They didn't show up. You can take a look at the photo. Look at the photo when they said this is for the Israeli lives lost versus the photo for Israeli and Palestinian lives lost. So who is speaking up for all the people? Who are the ones that are actually for all people, not for some people? That is us, and we're going to continue to do that. Go ahead.
I just wanted to speak a little bit because we didn't have any students here that could talk about what they're dealing with. I think you're specifically talking perhaps about university students. But I just want to say I have 5 children, okay? And I've had to get involved in the school system. And I'm very fortunate that I have a wonderful school system. But my 12-year-old was targeted, okay? She was targeted because her father is Palestinian. And she was targeted by another 12-year-old. And so words matter in the sense that we are unleashing things in this country, but it's against children who are Palestinian as well. Things were said about her that were reprehensible. And so I just ask that all of you keep that in mind, that there are a lot of children here suffering, okay? There is a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. It is real, okay? These things are real, but it doesn't serve any of us to ignore what is happening all over this country for so many people of different backgrounds. Okay, so children are being targeted, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you. She's 12, and the child was 12. These are children. They are hearing this from somewhere, okay?
So thank you. So we hear all the time about anti-Semitism, about Islamophobia, about racism, all kinds of racism, and of course they are all wrong. We're against all of them. What we don't hear about is the one that is rising the most. It's called anti-Palestinian racism. Mm-hmm. That is a distinct category by itself. And it has been the most lethal form of racism in the last few months. We're already witnessing the loss of 20,000 Palestinian lives because they don't count, because there is in the United States politicians and leaders who have anti-Palestinian racism, and they see the Palestinian life to be of lesser value. We saw that 6-year-old child in Chicago who was murdered by his neighbor. He stabbed him, a 70-year-old stabbed a 6-year-old boy 30 times because of anti-Palestinian racism. Please remember this word, anti-Palestinian racism. This is the one that we should be talking about, not about the other ones. We know all about the other ones. We are not against anyone. We are only against anti-criminals. We are against crimes. We are against crimes. We are anti-criminals. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're done.
Congresswoman, thank you for coming out.
Everything that you're doing. Yes, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Your neck out. Thank you.